Welcome to the English with Kirsty podcast from www.englishwithkirsty.com. Here I'll be sharing with you tips, information and other learning resources so that you can improve your business English. Hi everyone, and welcome to episode 83 of the English with Kirsty podcast. And today we're going to talk about reading because it's something that divides my students. Some people love reading and some people don't. And some people just wish that they could find the right book, because sometimes finding the right book is part of the problem. If you have a book that you want to read, then that will motivate you more than if you have a book that you have to read, for example, at school. So I've got 7 tips for things that you should do and 7 tips for things that you shouldn't do when you're looking for something to read and making sure that you get that book read. So when I talk about reading, I'm talking about everything from reading paper books to reading books on your Kindle to audiobooks. It applies, all these tips apply to whichever way you want to consume the content in English. And don't forget that if you are interested in Audible books, there's a special offer for people in Germany or the UK on my website, and you can sign up for a free book at Audible. It's a subscription, so you have to sign up to the service. But if you cancel within the first month, then the subscription won't renew and you won't have to pay. Of course, if you do want to continue the subscription, it's a good thing to do. I am an Audible subscriber. But if you're primarily interested in the free book, then just cancel within the first month. And also, if not, then you can find other places to get audiobooks from, such as many libraries have them now, so you don't even have to pay for them if you can go and check and see what kind of selection they have. So it doesn't always have to be paid content. So these tips apply to all kinds of books that you might want to read. And if you want to find out about the links for Audible or tell me about any good books that you've discovered lately, then you can do that by going to the show notes page, which is www.englishwithkirsty.com/podcast/episode 83. So first of all, things that you should do. So first of all, find something that's interesting. Nobody wants to read a boring book. I had to read a couple of books that I didn't find particularly interesting at school, but since then I have never done it. So if you want to succeed, then find something that you actually want to read. You know, a type of book that you would read in your native language. Okay, if you wouldn't generally read books, then maybe find something shorter, something like short stories or something more factual. Just find something that you are actually interested in, because otherwise you'll never pick this book up. So number 2, decide how you want to consume it. What do you enjoy? Do you want to listen to something while you're doing something else? Do you want to hold the book in your hands? Do you want to have it on an electronic device that you're already going to have with you? Think about how you want to read the book and then find the book in that format, rather than just thinking, I need to read this book and I've seen it in the bookshop, so I'll read it as a hard copy. Think about how you're most likely to consume the material. Number 3, remember to have it with you, because there's no point planning to do it. Sometimes you have to wait around, you've got half an hour spare or something, and you could read a book, but if you don't have that book with you, you can't. So if it's already on your phone, then that's fine as an audiobook, or if you have your tablet with you and it's or your Kindle, if you have it, that's fine. But if you don't, then remember to pop it in your bag, and then if you find that you have some free time, you can read it then. Number 4, try to set aside some time, and because if you don't, it'll never happen. I don't mean you have to put it on your calendar, now I'm going to read, but try and think when would be a good time for you to do it. Is it before you go to bed, or are you too tired then? Could you go for a walk and read outside somewhere as the weather's getting warmer? How can you fit reading into your day? If it's something you do anyway, then you won't have to think about this. But if it's a new habit for you, then sometimes you need to plan to make this new habit part of your everyday routine, because otherwise it won't happen. Number 5, if you're somebody that really likes conversations and working with others and being in a group, then there are book clubs, online book clubs, or maybe local book clubs, or find someone else who's reading this book, even if you go into a language forum and ask if anyone else would be interested in reading it with you. And then partly it's accountability, because if you say you're going to talk about the first 3 chapters, then you need to have read the first 3 chapters. It makes you do it. But also some people really get motivated by having that conversation and input from other people. So if that's you, then see if you can find like a book reading buddy to work with you on that. Number 6, if you'd rather read articles, then do that. Reading is reading. It doesn't matter if it's a book or an instruction manual, if it will improve your vocabulary and your reading skills. So if you say, I do not enjoy fiction books, then find something else to read. Follow some pages on social media or some articles about your industry. As long as it's in English, then you are working on your English language skills. So don't feel that you have to read stories if that's not what you want to do. And number 7, sometimes it helps if you know the story already. So on Twitter recently, someone told me that they enjoy reading books that they've already read in their native language because they know what happens. And that helps because they're already familiar with the story, with the characters, and with the way in which it's written. And then they can enjoy the English book more if they do that. So some people don't like to do that because they think, well, I know this story. But some people do because they like the sense of familiarity that it gives them. Okay, now 7 things that you shouldn't do. Don't choose a book that's too difficult for you. I've done this before. It wasn't fun. If it's too easy, it's not going to be a challenge. You may enjoy it. It won't stretch you. But if it's too difficult, you won't want to do it. You'll see it as a language exercise, a language homework, and not as something that you can enjoy. So think about that. And it doesn't matter if you start a book and you find it's too difficult and put it down again. That's not defeat. That's not failure. That's just realizing that it's not the best use of your time. So and I've done that as well. I've started reading a book and thought, no, I can't deal with another 500 pages of this, and put it down. And that's fine, because what's more important is that you find a book that's at the right language level for you. So, and if you need some help with that, then get some advice. Ask your friends or your teacher if you have one, or ask around. Do you think this is a good book to read? Do you think this is around my level? If that other person knows you quite well, because it's good to find something that it challenges you a bit. So maybe you have to look up a few words, but if you're looking up every other word, then that is not going to be an enjoyable experience for you, and it's not going to be something you want to do. The second one, don't choose books from hundreds of years ago unless there's a real reason why you want to do that, because if you're interested in the language of that time, then that's fine, but it won't help you with your English now, because the words are different, the way people speak is different, and I've seen people doing this, and it's not helpful, because if they try to copy the speech that's in those books, they'll sound like they came from a time machine from 200 years ago, and that's not really what you want if you was talking to your customers or your friends. So if you have a specific interest in that period or in that author, then fine, but it's not going to help you with your vocabulary and your conversational skills for now. So be aware of when the book was written. And even if people say, oh, it's a great classic, you should read it, in terms of reading for improving your English vocabulary and your conversational skills, it's not the best advice. So find something that's relatively modern. It doesn't have to be in the last year or so, 50 years is fine. But if you go several hundred years back, then you're going to find a completely different English to the English that we speak now. Number 3, don't write down every word that you don't know, because some of those words you'll never need again. Think of the context. Is this a word that you use in your native language? Is it a word that's likely to come up in writing or conversation in the future? If it is, great. If it's not, leave it. It doesn't matter. You don't need to learn every single word. And also try and limit yourself to, it depends from person to person, but to a certain number for each page or each chapter, because otherwise you're going to end up with a huge list of vocabulary and you're not necessarily going to revisit that. So try and be selective when you're selecting new words to learn, when you're choosing which ones are going to be of use to you, and by all means write them down, but don't end up with a huge monster of a vocabulary list that you're never going to go back to again. Number 4, if you haven't read many English books before, don't start with a huge long book, because it will feel like you'll never get to the end of it. You know, start smaller and work up to the longer books if this isn't something that you've done before. And sometimes books with shorter chapters are good as well, because you can say, okay, I'm going to read 1 chapter today, and maybe 2 if I have time. But if the chapters are really, really long, then you'll never feel that you get to the end of it. Number 5, I've touched on this when I was talking about the language, but if you find that you're not enjoying the book, then find another one. The world is full of books. I don't know, some people feel, oh, I've started this, so I have to persevere with it to the end, but I just think, why? We don't do that with TV series. If we start watching something and we think, oh, this is rubbish, I have to watch this to the end because I started. And I think it's the same with books. You know, if you're not enjoying it, then find another one, put it down. It hasn't got your attention. I usually, whether it's an English book or a German book, I usually give things like 1 chapter, 2 at the most, and if I'm not enjoying it after that, then there are so many other books that I can read. I don't feel bad about it. So I think, particularly with language learners, this is something we have to look about. You know, don't feel bad about it. It's not a reflection on you. It just maybe wasn't the right book for you at the time. Maybe you want to come back to it, or maybe you never want to see it again because you don't like the author. That's fine. There are loads of books out there. Number 6, don't expect to understand everything, particularly if the articles are of a technical nature or very specific about a particular industry. If it's your industry, you maybe want to spend some more time on it. But if it's really technical about something you'll never read about again, then it doesn't matter if you don't understand every single word. I had this problem. I was reading an article in Turkish and I was really struggling. I was thinking, oh, you're so useless. You don't know what this means. And in the end, I saw an English translation of that article and I was thinking, wow, I wouldn't have understood this in English. Because I'm not an engineer, and that's fine. It was like a building engineer, and that's not what I do. So it's okay if I decided that wasn't the best article for me to read. I thought it was going to be interesting at first, but it wasn't. So, but you know, it's okay not to understand every single thing. If it's something that's interesting for you and important to you, then you can spend some time looking up the words. But in general, you will come across things online that you don't understand or that are not particularly relevant, and it's okay to move on from them. And number 7, just don't expect that everything that you find on the internet is well written, because sometimes people come to me, my students or people in my Facebook group, and say, what does this mean? I don't think this is right. And I was like, no, it's not. It's not right, and it was written by a native speaker, and that's just the way it goes sometimes. So particularly if you're reading something like blogs or things that comments on news articles or Twitter, things like that, people's personal Facebook pages or other social networks, people don't always write their native language well, and that's just a thing. So when you're reading, you have to kind of think about who can I learn from, who is likely to give me good advice. And I mean, it happens to me as well. I read things in German sometimes and I think, well, that's not very good German, is it? And that's okay, because not everybody writes to the same standard. But when you're a learner, you don't have to copy this bad English or bad German. So it's being aware and being mindful. If you get a book, like a printed book, then probably it'll be okay, but it might not be. There might have been something that wasn't caught by the proofreaders. So just be aware that not all native speakers write well or correctly, and so if you don't understand something or you think something might be wrong, it may well be wrong. So just be aware of that and try not to copy it, because I think people have this idea about native speakers, oh, I want to speak or write like a native speaker, but really, you know, some native speakers don't speak or write very well, and that's a fact. That's a fact in all languages. So just be aware that there are mistakes out there and try not to copy them. So this is actually part of the language challenge, this reading topic. There are 10 topics in the language challenge, and you can get the whole thing as a PDF. So if you've listened to this, you will already have done one of the days, but there are exercises to go with it as well. So the language challenge is free. And if you want to sign up for it, there will be a place for you to do that on the show notes page, which again is englishwithkirsty.com/podcast/episode 83. And if you go there, you can sign up for a PDF with the whole language challenge. So it does include the information here, but there are another 9 days, and you also get a document where you can fill in your answers to the activities, and you can work through the 10-day language challenge by following the instructions in the PDF and filling in the document. So it's basically a way to help you to move on with your English language. I did it in January, the idea of new year, new start and everything, but really you can make a new start anytime. It doesn't have to be the beginning of the year. So if that's something that you're interested in, again, go to the show notes page and you can request it on the form there. So I hope you enjoyed that. I hope that's given you some ideas for choosing your next book. And if you want to share with me what that next book is, tell me something about it, then you can also do that on the show notes page. Have a good week and have fun learning English. I hope you enjoyed this episode of the English with Kirsty podcast. If you have any questions or comments, my email address is kirsty@englishwithkirsty.com, or you can go to www.englishwithkirsty.com/podcast, where you'll find information about the individual episodes.